So good morning again. So today I have kind of a double desire, I guess. And one of them is to wish you all peace in this moment within yourselves, but also as you move forward through this transition, because transitions can be challenging, they can be scary, it can be, it's all filled with uncertainty. So that's part of what I'm hoping to do today, is just to talk a little bit about peace and look at homes. What is our spiritual home, and what will house you as you move forward. And then also to just start thinking about transitions and what they mean and what they offer us. So sometimes we tend to think of only the negative when we're facing something that's a little bit challenging or difficult. So how can we recognize the beauty of those transitions and what they serve? So I want to kind of explore these things today and how to embrace those moments of challenge. So I wanted to start actually by looking at this song that I wrote, Peace to This House, was inspired by something from the Bible. Luke 10:5, I believe, is the passage. Jesus has sent his disciples out before him to places he's going to go, and has given them instruction to say peace to this house for every house that they enter. So this is part of that passage from Luke 10. Do not take a purse or bag or sandals. When you enter a house, first say peace to this house. If someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. Stay there, eating and drinking whatever they give you. Heal the sick who are there and tell them the kingdom of God has come to be among you. So some verses later it says that the disciples returned with joy in their hearts. When they'd been out doing their work, they had found that resting in the Word of God had given them a lot of power that they didn't expect to have. And so they were quite joyful upon their return about how they'd been received. It was pretty miraculous. So Jesus turned to them and he said, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings wanted to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." So I think he's talking about this power that's there when you rest in that confidence in God. He sent them out, telling them to leave behind their worldly possessions and not to worry about anything, but just to go with what they had on their backs and to trust that they would be provided for. And that's exactly what happened. So I wanted to read a little bit from this book, The Hidden Gospel. I think I've read from it before. It's written by Neil Douglas Klotz, and he is really a scholar on the Aramaic interpretation of the Bible. So I wanted to kind of look at that passage and see what he had to say. It's pretty powerful. He says, Yeshua, or Jesus' greeting of peace, with which this chapter begins, reinforces the themes of peace. The Western definition of the word peace sees it simply as the absence of war or conflict. But the Semitic languages see it as something more profound. Both the Hebrew shalom and the Aramaic shalama derive from a verb that means to be fulfilled or complete, to surrender or be delivered, or even to die. The convergence of these images may again be found in the Jewish creation story, where Genesis reports that on the seventh day God rested. The Hebrew word for rest, Shabbath, can also mean to end or complete something, as well as to restore oneself to an original state or point of departure. By a mystical interpretation of this passage, as unity rested, it restored to itself the remembrance of what had been before creation, the primal void. This period of remembrance was sanctified. Space was reserved for it as the day of rest or Sabbath. Not to know one's origins ultimately results in doubt. Recognizing our origins, that we all came from this place of peace, can mean the realization of our human ancestry as Bar Nasha, children of change, or it can mean acknowledgement of the origins of the universe. To feel one's mortality can bring desolation. The uncertainty and tenuousness of human existence can motivate an impulsive search for control and acquisition as a way to keep the uncertainty at bay. Or it can engender an appreciation for the preciousness of each interaction, each one an opportunity to remember the peace that existed before the story of the universe began. That's that same peace that we have in our hearts every single day, but sometimes we forget or get disconnected from the peace of God that lies within us. So I really love this passage and how it's talking about transformation and change being a little death. But what comes after death is a new life. So that was all of Jesus' message in a nutshell, basically. And we're going through this all the time. And we just went through Easter, which is all about dying and being reborn. So every time we have these transitions, every time there's change, something is dying, which allows for this resting period that then will move us into something new, to new life. And it's all part of the cycle, and every part of it is necessary. So this part that's difficult, the letting go and the death, the giving way, is difficult but necessary for something new to be born. So I know that we're all going through that in our personal lives every day, and this congregation is going through that in a real way as you look for a new home. So Charles Fillmore has a beautiful faith affirmation. He says, "My doubts and fears are dissolved and dissipated. In confidence and peace, I rest in God." So I'd like you to close your eyes just for a second. I'm just going to read that again so you can let that sink in. My doubts and fears are dissolved and dissipated. In confidence and peace, I rest in God. And that word confidence actually means con fe, with faith. So I love thinking about that word that way. It's not just that I'm going to, jump out there and do whatever it is with courage, but it implies in and of itself that I have faith in my heart and in my being. So how can we open our mind to all the opportunities and options that our transformation brings us? So this is another thing that's kind of problematic, and it was mentioned in this passage, that we tend to, in these moments of transition and change, we tend to start clinging to things. We want certain outcomes. We want the past. We're clinging to the past. We're clinging to the future. And that keeps us from really being open to all the options that there are. So how can we find this way of resting in trust while still looking and keeping our eyes open, but really allowing for all the options that are available to us to become apparent? I found this nice quote by Harry Truman. He says, "A pessimist is one who makes difficulties of his opportunities, and an optimist is one who makes opportunities of his difficulties." So how can we make our difficulties into opportunities? I wanted to think, too, a little bit more about a house, houses. What is a house, and what does a physical home provide for us, and what is its importance? And I just happened to find this passage a couple of weeks ago from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Familiar with that book? If you're not, go get it. It's full of wisdom. Every page is full of wisdom. So I was actually thinking about this song that I had just sung, and I thought, well, what does he have to say about houses? And it's truly, truly beautiful and very fitting for spring, with the beauty of the earth bounding out everywhere. So he says, "Build of your imaginings a bower in the wilderness, ere you build a house within the city walls. Your house is your larger body. It grows in the sun and sleeps in the stillness of night. It is not dreamless. Does your house dream? And dreaming leave the city for grove or hilltop? Would the valleys were your streets and the green paths your alleys, that you might seek one another through vineyards and come with the fragrance of the earth. And tell me, O people, what have you in these houses, and what is it you guard with fastened doors? Have you peace, the quiet urge that reveals your power? Have you remembrances, the glimmering arches that span the summits of the mind? Have you beauty that leads the heart from things fashioned of wood and stone to the holy mountain? Tell me, have you these in your houses? O children of peace, you who are restless in rest, you shall not be trapped nor tamed. Your house shall not be an anchor, but a mast. It shall not be a glistening film that covers a wound, but an eyelid that guards the eye. You shall not fold your wings that you may pass through doors, nor bend your heads that they strike not against a ceiling, nor fear to breathe lest walls should crack and fall down. You shall not dwell in tombs made by the dead for the living. And though of magnificence and splendor, your house shall not hold your secret, nor shelter your longing. For that which is boundless in you abides in the mansion of the sky, whose door is the morning mist, and whose windows are the songs and the silences of night. So I love that idea of letting go sometimes of this physical form that is our house, that we cling to, that we think is so important. And Jesus also, talked about the fact that, I can't remember what the question was, but he says, wherever two are gathered in my name, there go I. That doesn't at all talk about the physical building of a church. And it's important to remember that, even if there's a time when during this transition, when this congregation doesn't have a physical building, there are other ways of gathering. Maybe you gather in people's homes, maybe you gather in a park, but wherever you are gathered, you will be with the Spirit of God. So it's important to trust, letting go of worry, so that we might be open to all of these different presentations of what our home will be. I love, too, what Jesus has to say about worry. It's one of my most favorite passages in the Bible, is that part in Matthew about the lilies of the field and the flowers of the field. So I wanted to read just a little bit of that for you. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet God feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear, or even where shall we be? For God knows what you need. Seek first his kingdom, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So I love every part of that passage. I love those images of nature and God providing and letting go of worry and recognizing that we don't need to borrow trouble from the future, but rather just be in today and look at what today needs. For we know in our hearts that God is abundantly full of good fortune. So there's a lot of power in this idea, too, of wherever two or three are gathered in my name. And I like to think of that story that I read to the children about the little house. What happened when they all came together. So they made a wish, the little boy made a wish and threw it out to the universe. And good fortune came upon him by meeting the man and getting the peach pit. And that grew out of kindness. I really love that part of the story, too, that it's because he sat with the old man that the old man decided to bestow this wish upon him. But then what happened is that they found a little miracle, and they started to feed the miracle with what they had. They took their wishes and their desires, but they also took everything from their old home and fed it to this little house. So there was labor involved, there was trust and confidence, there was wonder. And there was them all working together to make this thing happen. And the more they fed it, the bigger it grew. It didn't happen overnight. They didn't just give it one stick and poof, there's a house. The little boy didn't make a wish and suddenly there's the house. But over some time, they worked together to feed this dream that they had. So this is a very powerful, powerful thing. And actually, the passage that comes right before that, about 2 or 3 gathered in my name, it says, "Truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by God." I didn't know about that part until I was looking for this passage and looking at the context of it. So that's also very powerful. He's saying if you believe together, not by yourself, but together, if you believe together, it will happen. So I'm actually taking a music marketing class right now and came upon this wonderful quote by the teacher of the class. His name is Bob Baker. He's kind of a music marketing guru. And he says, "Thoughts are things." It's very unity thinking. I think he must go to unity. "What starts as an intangible concept grows into a reality as a result of mental focus combined with real-life activity." So that's what happened with that little house story, and that's what will happen here with your church. But during these times, often there are moments of difficulty, and there's moments of uncertainty, and there's moments of challenge, and patience is required. And that's sometimes something that's really difficult for us in these times of struggle. So how can we find a way to embrace this struggle, maybe even some darkness? And I like to remind people about this whole, process of dying and being reborn. Usually it involves a lot of darkness and struggle. And I may have mentioned these things before, but I like to think of the seed in the ground. It's dark down there. And that little seed, it's a miracle, really, that little tiny sprout can somehow push up through the ground. So there's struggle involved. It's reaching for the light. The chicken in its egg, I just learned this from a farm boy. I didn't know this, but it takes a long time, I guess, of the little chicken pecking on the inside of the egg before it can be born. But if you help it out, it will die because it's too weak. So it needs to struggle in order to be strong enough to live. And the butterfly in the cocoon, it has to stay in the cocoon, in that darkness, in that confined space, until it's ready to come out. And if it doesn't get to struggle out of the cocoon on its own, it will never fly because its wings won't be strong enough. So all of these images are super important. And you can think about human birth. Now that is something filled with pain, for those of you who've gone through it or watched it, struggle, squeezing, but what comes out is just phenomenal. Messy, it's also messy. So these things are all part of being reborn. I recently, on Easter, actually Easter Sunday, at my home church in Lawrence, it was about crucifixion and resurrection, and the minister there gave a really interesting message, and it involved recognizing that there are always these struggles in our lives, and those are crucifixion moments. And then there's us getting through to the other side, and those are the resurrection moments. And then she started talking about how we can often choose which mode we're going to be in. And I was struggling with a really difficult decision. Actually, I'd been offered an interview for a university day job, which was in direct conflict with what I'm currently doing. And I had applied for the job thinking well, maybe it would be responsible of me to do that and have health insurance, et cetera. But when I got this interview, it really did not feel like the right thing. So I was struggling with that and trying to figure out what I should do. And as she spoke, I realized that going that route and taking that position, even though it did have benefits, was me choosing crucifixion mode, because I really didn't want to do it at all. It didn't feel like what I was called to do. It didn't feel like the best use of my energy. And choosing to continue with what I'm doing, which is what I really believe my calling is, was me choosing to live in the resurrection mode. So when we are facing these challenges, we always have this choice. Are we going to live in that place of this sucks and I can't do this and it's awful and it's hard? Or are we going to be in the resurrection mode, which is one of, I believe good is coming, and even though this is a struggle right now, I know that there is good in this. So we have that choice every single day. And I had a very nice, I received a book that had readings through the Lent period from Unity. And this is from that booklet. We can easily identify with the bittersweet awareness that change is inevitable, that our comfortable and secure existence takes turns into the unknown. We also know that every step into a new spiritual dimension seems at first to produce confusion and disruption. Charles Fillmore called this soul evolution, and it was represented by Jesus' torment in the Garden of Gethsemane the day before his crucifixion. He inherently somehow knew what was coming, and he was in anguish over it. Our resurrection is guaranteed as long as we neither run from these struggles nor cling to them. Crucifixion is simply a necessary step to the spiritual glories that lie beyond. So all struggles, all transitions offer us these opportunities to grow spiritually, to increase in trust, and to increase in faith. And I just want to tell you one other small thing. I remember that something that happened in my own life. I had twins, and I had twins and moved to a foreign country when they were 6 weeks old with no real income and some other challenges that I won't go into right now, but it was a very difficult time for me, and I spent probably, most of a year saying to myself, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then actually, one of my daughters almost drowned in a bucket of water, one of those 5-gallon buckets, and my other twin, the other twin, called it to my attention and basically saved her life. And I changed that question. I became so grateful for having twins, whereas before I was just feeling like I couldn't handle it. I changed my whole thinking after that moment to how can I deal with this? Whatever the situation was, how can I deal with this? Which opened my mind up to all kinds of possibilities. So I would offer that to you, that when you're faced with some kind of challenge, when you have that thought of, I can't do this, just switch to saying, how can I do this? And the options and opportunities will come to you. So in Hebrews it says, faith is assurance of things hoped for, a conviction of things not seen. And that's what it is ours to remember now. Charles Fillmore reminds us there are opportunities everywhere, just as there have always been. So we give thanks for the transformations and opportunities now expressing in our lives. We are open to our resurrection in every moment. We accept our good, and then we leave the final step to God. We are at peace. So we're going to move into a meditation now. I'll sing a song. It's a Karen Drucker song called Let Go of the Shore. And it's a beautiful image about trusting and letting go of those things we cling to. And then we'll move into a meditation.